I think the most damning thing for Trey Lance would be if the Niners gave up on him. And I don't know if trading him would be giving up on him, but if they got to a point where they just decided to cut him. And cut down day is 3 weeks from tomorrow.
And there were those reports. I was very upset about that. I know you saw my post. I know you saw my post.
And that's why I wanted to get into this with you. And 888-957-9570 is the phone number. I see you all lining up to talk and to weigh in on the quarterback situation, and I'd love to get your comments. Alan Stiles in for Mark Willard today. And that's partly why I wanted to bring this up, because when Michael Silver wrote that article, and he didn't say that they were going to cut him, and I think that the way he wrote it, I thought was astute and accurate.
Oh,
of course. A possibility. Cut down days in 22 days. They're either going to make Trey the 2, the 3, trade him, or cut him. Can we agree that those are the 4 ways that this is going to go?
Yeah.
QB1 is Brock.
I don't know if there is a fifth way.
He'd be QB1. He beats out Brock Purdy.
Sure.
And I don't know if there's a chance of that, like you were talking about, unless there's a calamitous injury that happens to Brock Purdy, knock on wood. But if he beats out Sam and he's the 2, that's great. If he doesn't beat out Sam and he's the 3, to me, at that point, you'd be better off trading him. He'd be better off being traded, even if you could only get a 4th or a 5th.
Exactly. And at that point, you're just cutting your losses and licking your wounds and saying, all right, at least we made up with Brock. Now, I will say, I'm not going to sit here right now and say I know for a fact that Brock Purdy is a franchise guy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as of right now, as of 3:33, right, on this given day, that Brock Purdy is the guy. But if you're making me say, hey, do you think Brock Purdy's a franchise guy for the Niners? That I don't know. That I can't say that. I can't say yet. But what I do know is that Brock has come in and done some really nice things. The offense has looked really good. An offense that is fully loaded, right? But as this thing continues, and you would assume that Brock will also get better, right? But as this thing continues, you're not always going to be playing with this full deck, right? At some point, the Niners are going to lose somebody, whether it's on the offensive side, whether it's on the defensive side. So you're not always going to have this hot and ready Little Caesars version of a roster.
That's a 3.
There you go. Where I'm not going to say anybody because that's disrespectful, where somebody with Brock Purdy's skill set can play very well. But right now, it makes the most sense.
Yeah, and you're not going to give a second contract to Trey and Brock. And this is something that I've contended all along. So you're going to get to a point at the end of this year where you're going to have to make a decision. Even if you keep Trey as the 2, if Brock starts all year and you have a good year and he stays healthy, well, then it's not a conversation. You're going to keep Brock. You don't have to sign Brock. You actually can't sign Brock for another year until after his 3rd year. So at that point, you probably would be looking to get something for Trey Lance. But if Brock has a wobbly year or a year that has injury as a part of it, and Trey steps in for him, and Trey actually looks good, and he wins games, and at the end of the year, there's some question about Trey and Brock, then we've got ourselves a real conversation. John is in Hayward. John, you're on 95.7 The Game. What's going on?
What's happening, Dibs and Styles?
Hey.
Hey, man, look, here's my whole view in this, and then I'm going to tell you what I would do. First and foremost, I need to know who the hell traded up all that to get to the Dolphins to get the number 3 pick. That seems like a package they could have sweetened up and sent to Jacksonville and tried to get, the quarterback.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I don't think that they were going to be able to get all the way up to 1, John.
Yeah, maybe not, but look, they did that trade a month before the draft, and they had no one in mind, I believe. They just wanted to get in position to make a choice. Here's what I would do. Brock's number 1. I would go ahead and name Trey number 2, make it seem like he won that job and beat out Darnold, and I would use that as trade bait. He's clearly the number 2. We can get rid of him for something. I believe we could get a 3, and I think they would take that.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm not sure if that is, really what the Niners are thinking in terms of their best interest, because what we saw last year, Alan, was you ran out of quarterbacks. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are acutely aware of the reality of last year. Now, you can't keep all 4 of these guys because even if you cut Brandon Allen in 3 weeks, he probably doesn't make it through waivers and lands on your practice squad. Ideally, that would happen. That way you would have Brandon Allen as your emergency to the emergency. But most likely, if you stick with Brock and Sam and Trey, somebody's going to pick up Brandon, and you'll have to find some random rookie to be QB4.
Right. But to that point about making Trey 2 maybe just for optics, even though I agree with it, I also don't want to. I know a sucker is born every minute, but I also don't want to think that these organizations wouldn't be hip to that, would fall for it, right? I mean, everybody has intel, whether it's the agents or whoever it is. So I think that they would be able to tell, and they're reading all these articles. They're reading the fact that it's even close. So the question ultimately becomes, in terms of Trey Lance's trade value, is how much do other teams value Sam Darnold? That's really it. Because if Sam Darnold maybe is viewed as a better quarterback than the normal person, Sam Darnold sees ghosts, and we have all these jokes for him.
Yeah.
If NFL teams see Sam Darnold like that, and then Trey can't beat him out, then that's a bad look. But if NFL teams think, look, Sam Darnold, New York was kind of a mess, not really sure what happened. Carolina, same idea, but we know he's got a couple of different things that he can do. So it's not crazy to think that in that Kyle Shanahan offense, he does look good. Let's go ahead and make a move for Trey, because it's not the worst thing in the world. And look, I think the same thing. I think the way I'm talking about it is how maybe some of these teams are looking at it, thinking, hey, Sam Darnold is more of a Kyle Shanahan type of guy in that offense. Trey, maybe it's less about Trey not being good enough, which we don't know because he hasn't played enough.
It might be more about what Sam does as opposed to what Trey
just skill
doesn't
sets.
do.
Just skill sets.
Well, Kyle Shanahan spoke today after practice, and I had mentioned this before about the Matt Mayoko article and Sam Darnold not having thrown an interception this year at camp. This was Kyle Shanahan's response with reporters today.
He had a near interception today, but Sam Darnold hasn't thrown any so far in camp. Is that something that you were curious about?
You sure? Huh? Well, 2 days ago. You guys positive? You guys are pretty good at charting these stats, but there was a tip, and I'll bet you guys $5. Oh, are we allowed to bet on that? Hey, well, I'll take it. No picks. I don't know. I thought there was a tip that the guy dove for and got, but I'll check again.
And in light of all of the gambling controversy now that's dogging our sports, Kyle Shanahan had to pull the plug on that one real quick. Are we allowed to do that? He's about to bet $5 with somebody. That was Matt Barrows, friend of the program from The Athletic, who asked the question. But to your point, I think it's more about what Sam Darnold is doing than it is about what Trey Lance is not doing. If Sam Darnold, if you have a backup quarterback, you want him to come in and steer the ship, basically. You mentioned it before, McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Jennings. You got weapons, and you've got that beautiful laminated play sheet. You've got a very good offensive line, not the best in football, but you've got a Hall of Fame left tackle. You got a great scheme. You go 21 personnel with your fullback. The quarterback is not an afterthought, but you just need somebody to not come in and mess it up.
Right, and that's why when you look at a lot of backup QBs, a lot of them don't have these electric skill sets because, look, we're not trying to win the Super Bowl with you unless you're the Eagles and you're able to pull that off. But we're just trying to get through, hopefully win half of the games until our guy comes back. So if you're going to have somebody like Brock Purdy go down, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way in terms of it's a bad look for Trey if he is 3 in terms of the talent and how he's played, and it's less about that and more about, look, when you need your number 2 in a backup situation to just get through a game, Trey is still a bit of a wild card, and we're just going to go to Sam because we just feel more comfortable with him. He's been around a couple different franchises.
It says a lot, though, when you've got a guy who's averaged 1 interception per game, and that's where I do think it's a little bit of a knock on Trey. Sam Darnold was highly drafted, like Trey Lance, but this is Sam Darnold's 3rd team. And you mentioned him seeing ghosts, and that is a story. It's kind of a funny anecdote. These are words that came out of his mouth when either he or somebody near him was mic'd up, and that's not good when your quarterback is seeing ghosts, basically meaning that I don't know what's going on out there. It's moving too fast, and I don't even know where to throw. So if Kyle can reclaim this guy and turn him into something, that's a feather in Kyle's cap. But that also, to me, is a little bit of a little damning for Trey Lance to be beaten out by a guy like that.
It also just matters how much you care about training camp stats in general. Because to me, we might not know what Sam Darnold is now until he's in a real game. I'm not talking about preseason or one of these joint practices, literally in the game.